Hi, this is Miss Cindy, and I'm back again today to try another craft project. I like working with wood, which you guys already know, but I need something in my bedroom to help me get on the bed. I have a pretty high bed, and a step stool would be nice. Between my mattresses and my pillow tops, I sometimes have to jump up on the bed just to get dressed in the morning. So I'm going to attempt to make a little wood step stool that matches my room decor. So this is how high the bed is. I'm going to see if I can make just a small step stool so I'm not jumping up on the bed every time I get dressed in the morning. And as you can see, I have an Egyptian bedspread. So I need to find some fabric that I have around the house that'll match that. I'm only going to need a few items if this goes the way I want, and I'll show you what those items are. So here are most of the supplies that I'm going to use. These are really 1 3/8 by 1 3/8 square wood, and I just cut them down to 9 inches. I cut them evenly to 9 inches. And this piece here, this is a piece of spare wood that I had left over, and that is a 3/4 inch wood, and I cut that 12 by 13, just enough for my feet, can stand on there. Naturally, need a pencil and a ruler, and I haven't decided if I'm going to uh, stain the legs or paint the legs, but I have both. I'm going to need Mod Podge, and I'm going to use four 2.5 flathead wood screws. The only other thing I needed was, I said I was going to decorate this, so I got a piece of Egyptian fabric that might work. I don't know if I'm going to stick with this one or not. Once I put it together, I'll decide. And then just for the bottom of the feet, I got these like the felt pads. They're already pre-cut in circles that you can put on the bottom of them so they don't scuff up the floor. Or I may just cut some squares and glue those to the bottom of the feet so they don't scuff up the floor. So that's about all I need for this project. Once I get started, I'll let you see it. Before you do any type of nailing into wood, you want to make sure everything is lined up so that when you do your drilling and the nailing, everything goes in perfectly. So for the legs, I have them all lined up. They're sitting up there nice and even. I'm going to come over and I'm just going to put an X like right in the middle, right there, for where I'm going to drill the holes. So I'm going to do that for each one, and then I'm going to go ahead and drill the holes, put my nail in, and make sure it's sturdy before we go any further. Okay, the step stool has been nailed in with the four legs. You will notice in the middle that I did have a piece of wood left over. So I went ahead and just put a leg in the center just for extra support. And I turned it to the side so it's like shaped like a diamond instead of a square, just to give it just a little look. Now is the fun part, and that will be decorating it, which I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do yet. You will also notice over here, what I did was I just sealed the edges with some wood glue and let it sit overnight so it's nice and sturdy. And it has passed the weight test. I stepped on it and jumped on it a couple of times, and it's nice and sturdy. Whenever I paint on wood and I'm going to use acrylic paint, I always gesso it. I also do it for canvas too. So I'm just going to go ahead and gesso using Master's Touch acrylic gesso to gesso the whole bottom, all of the legs, and the sides. I'm not going to do the top because I'm doing something else with the top, and it would just be a waste of gesso. So now that it's all gessoed, I did the bottom of the table, of the stool, the sides and the legs, and I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'm gonna come back with some fine sandpaper, and I'm just gonna sand the sides just very lightly to get some of the wood imperfections smooth, so that when I do decide to put this acrylic paint on it, it should go nice and smooth. When I'm ready to paint, I'll be back. The bottom of my step stool has been painted. As you can see, I used two different browns. No one's going to see the bottom of the step stool, but it needed to be finished off, so I just had some fun with some color. It took 2 coats of paint, so I'm going to let this dry really good. And then I'll flip it over and start to tackle the top. As you will notice, I didn't do the trim. I left the trim bare for now. I think I'm going to do that last, and that's only because when I use fabric, I always cut it a little bit more than what I'm placing it on with Mod Podge. And then once it dries really good, I'll go around and cut or razor blade the edges. And I didn't want to paint it and then some of the paint come off. So I'm going to leave that for last. We're going to let this dry and then I'll be back with how I put my fabric on. Okay, everything is nice and dry. And I ironed my fabric that I'm going to Mod Podge to the top, and it's laying up there the way it's going to be placed. You could see a little bit of overlay here. That's the extra I was talking about. Um, Once that dries, and I'll probably trim that off. I'm going to use, I don't have any wax paper, so I'm going to use some parchment paper, and I'm going to put the fabric on the parchment paper where I can Mod Podge both sides. And I'm going to do something a little differently this time. I'm going to take some Mod Podge and I'm just going to go around the edges, not too thick, because when you start pushing it down and pressing it down, I don't want too much glue to come out on the edges because I still plan on painting the edges. So we're going to get this Mod Podge and see how it comes out. Well, I put my Mod Podge on. As I stated before, I ran a thin layer of Mod Podge around the edges. I'm not worrying about the nails. It's going to be, they'll be coated. There'll be a covering over them. And then I put some Mod Podge on the table, a little bit on the back of the fabric, and then I went ahead and put it on, and then I poured some on top. Some people use a brush, some people use a sponge. I prefer to use my fingers, and that's only because you get air bubbles in Mod Podge, and if you don't get those air bubbles out, then the fabric or whatever you're putting it to, it may separate. Also on my corners, as you can see, I didn't put too much glue on the corners. I left that pretty much naked so that it'll be easy. I'll be able to just trim it and it won't stick to the actual trim down bottom. So I did pretty good. I had a couple of drips that I just wiped off immediately with the sponge. So now we're just going to wait and see if it dries the way I would like it to dry. And then I'm going to come around, I'm going to trim the edges, and then I'm going to put my protective coat on it. I'm just going to use a clear gloss glaze. This does take 7 days to cure, because then once you wait the 7 days, you can actually wipe this down if you need to wipe it down. I use this same gloss on when I do plates or glass or anything. So we'll wait for this to dry and then I'll be back after I trim it. Well, my step stool is actually done. I used a bronze metallic paint just to give it a little pop for the trim. I did 2 coats of that also. And I went and used the Delta clear gloss glaze that I sometimes finish off my work. It gives it a shiny look. It's a little cloudy now because I just painted that on. So actually I'm finished, and once the top dries, I'll give you a picture of what it looks like. Well, the Egyptian step stool has finally dried. Look how nice and shiny that came out. It has a nice finish. Mod Podge, everything's dried, and it came out the way I envisioned. It came out pretty good. So let's put it in the bedroom to see how it looks up against the bed. Yep, that'll work. It's pretty perfect. That's just what I needed. Well, thanks for watching this video. Everyone have a great day.